Welcome to another edition of Tackle Talk Live. I'm Ranger Daiwa Pro Staffer Steve Graff, along with V&M General Manager Kevin Jean. And again, we're a show dedicated to making you a better angler. And today's show, part two of the Conroe Gang. And we've got a very special guest this week. Kevin, who we got?
Mr. Zell Rowland, Mr. Topwater himself.
Mr. Topwater.
This one's going to be a fun interview, Steve. Zell is always a great interview, as you know very well.
Yeah,
He really goes into detail on some things, and really excited to get his opinions and thoughts on where we're at right now in the industry and how he got started, like we've been doing.
Yeah. I'll give it a little brief history on Zell and all his career background. But again, as Kevin alluded to, we're also going to get his opinion on where the industry is now, where it's heading, because with COVID-19, it's fixing to be some changes. And Kevin, is a guy that's in the business like you're in, you're probably already thinking about, okay, when we come back, what can I expect?
Yeah, there's a lot of things going through all of our minds, Steve, and on this deal, and it's how do we, because for our industry, February, March, April, May is when we really make our money, and this, of course, hitting when it hit and all the tournaments being postponed, so on and so forth. It's all right. Now, what do we do to kind of get back on this? A lot of manufacturers are shut down. I'm very fortunate. Some of my manufacturers have not. I know a lot of companies that they're not manufacturing. They're out of inventory, and they can't get it. Ones that are going overseas, you can forget it. They can't get anything.
And without inventory, you can't sell.
I'll be honest with you. I'm really interested to see which companies make it through this.
Yeah. There's going to be some people fall by the wayside in there.
Definitely is.
Before we get to that, hey, make sure to like us on Facebook and also follow us, because that's how you're going to get a notification that, hey, we're coming on air. Be ready in 5 minutes, whatever it is that James is posting for us. And James Stanfield is the guy behind the camera. He's the brains of the outfit here. So we appreciate all his doings and workings to making this show happen. Also, make sure to subscribe on our Facebook page. You'll also get a notification through YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe on our YouTube page. That way you'll get notifications on that as well. And hopefully you'll like what we're doing. Kevin, real quick, while I get Zell Rowland on the phone, tell us about our sponsor.
The Boat Shop. Mr. Raymond Kidd and his staff take great pride in keeping your boat and motor performing at its best. A certified Yamaha dealer and home of the best motor on the market today, the Yamaha Show. So if you're looking for a great aluminum boat, they now carry Sea Art. So stop by 2410 Sanford Avenue in Shreveport and let the Boat Shop take care of your boating needs. Or you can give them a call, 318-402-0399, or on their website, shreveportboatshop.com.
And on the phone with us, we have the one and only, the legendary member of the Conroe Gang, Mr. Zell Rowland, Mr. Topwater himself. And real quick, just to give you our fans and his fans out there and kind of an update as to what Zell, his winnings, 1.4 million worth of winnings. He's fished both BASS and FLW. It's combined winnings between both circuits. 350 BASS and FLW events fished. 37 BASS and FLW top 10s. 18 Classic and Cup appearances. So again, this man is one of the legends of the sport. And if you want to know about Topwater fishing, he is definitely the guy you want to listen to. Zell, thank you for being on with us today, buddy.
Hey, man, you're more than welcome. I'm happy to be able to do it with you guys today.
Mr. Zell, just kind of, this is part two of the Conroe Gang for you guys, and we had Mr. Gary Klein on last week and kind of, gave us his backstory, how he got started, and there at Lake Conroe, and when he got started with his tournament career. So if you don't mind, can you just kind of give us a little bit of your backstory there on Conroe and when you got started?
Well, it goes back to when I was probably 15 years old. I originated from Bill Dance country up in Tennessee, and we moved to Texas, and I started fishing all the Texas lakes back when I was about 15 years old, and guiding a little bit in high school, and I've never left. I'm still here.
You're a Tennessee transplant into Texas now.
I'm a Tennessee transplant that turned into, some people call me Texan, but I'm because I talk like them now.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, you tend to do that. That's like I'm from East Texas, and when I go home, everybody says I sound like a coon ass now. I talk Cajun. I don't think I do that, but they say I do. But anyway, real quick, Zell, I think in high school growing up, you were an athlete. Tell us about some of other than bass fishing, what else did you participate in?
Oh, man, I've done it all. When I was little, my mom, bless her heart, she wanted me to be a tennis player, and I could play tennis. I mean, I can still hit the ball some, but my dad wanted me to play football, and Texas probably has one of the top high school football sports in the country.
Yes, I can attest to that.
And, my dad wanted me to play football, and so I played football growing up, and when I got into high school, I quarterbacked some at Conroe High School, and my senior year, I got to play against the Earl Campbell one time. That was enough.
Yeah. I remember watching Earl Campbell.
But I could throw a football, and I was very accurate at it, and I could throw it hard and flat, or I could throw it 50, 60 yards. And, it's funny, I was in the service yard at one of the tournaments this past year, and I'm 62 now, and they pass the time of day while they're waiting on one of us to tear something up. So I pulled into the service yard, and they were tossing a football around, and one of them said, "Man, you used to play football, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Can you still throw it?" I said, "Probably. I may not be able to throw it as far, but I bet I can still throw it." And so they tossed me the ball, and one of them says, "Well, I'm going to take off running." And I said, "Well, what shoulder do you want it over, your left or your right?" And he said, "My left shoulder." I said, "Well, just stick your hands out." So he took off running. He ran about 10 yards, and he stopped. And I said, "Man, I don't throw one over his shoulder at 10 yards. I hit him right in the chest." I said, "Just keep going." But I let him run out there about 30 yards, and as he was running, I let go of that football, and it hit him dead in his hands. And I said, "That's all y'all are going to get right there."
Yeah, throw my arm back to me now. Yeah.
But, no, I love the sport. And, my problem was I took up fishing. I mean, I fished my first BASS tournament at the age of 13. And I always wanted to fish. Even when I was playing football, I'd rather go fishing than play the game. Mm-hmm. And, I got in more trouble with my coaches because if it was the month of March and the fish were biting, I wouldn't show up for practice. I would drag my boat to high school, and it'd be sitting in the parking lot. And at 2 o'clock, I was driving to the lake instead of going to the field house.
Wow.
But I've done about every sport there is. I love to hunt, fish. I mean, it doesn't make any difference to me if we go saltwater fishing for a marlin, or I've caught them all.
Yeah.
And I just love the outdoors. I mean, it's something about being outdoors. It's like nothing else a person could do.
Well, Zell, when did you get started? I know you said you started fishing tournaments there in high school. When did you really, really dial into the tournament fishing and the BASS? When did you start on tour with them?
Well, I mean, I was scheduled when I was 13. I was going to fish them all. And back then they didn't have an age limit on it. It's like anything else. It only takes one person to probably complain. And I caught about a 4-pounder in that tournament. In the newspapers, back then, the length limit on bass was 10 inches. And you could catch 7 of them. And my 4-pounder outweighed this guy's 7 fish. And as we were walking, back then we didn't have weigh-in back. We put them on fish stringers. and I got a picture of that somewhere. of me walking up to the weigh-ins with that 4-pounder on my stringer, and that guy's holding his behind his back.
Wow.
But I started back in 1980 is when I fished my first full season with bass and qualified for the Bassmasters Classic on the St. Lawrence River with the one that Bo Dowden won.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a competitor, and I love the competition of the sport of bass fishing, because you're not going to win. You're not expected to win every tournament you go fish. It's not me competing against the other competitor as much as it is me competing against the fish. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm fascinated with, is more than anything, is trying to outwit or outsmart a fish, and you're not going to do that every day.
No. Well, Zell, and you're exactly right. There different fishermen have different techniques. Denny Brower's a flipping guy, and Jimmy Houston's a spinnerbait guy, and but you chose basically topwater to be your specialty. Why was topwater your deal?
I've always been fascinated with topwater baits and how fish will strike one and come get it. And 90% of the time, you're going to see them when they get it or try to get it. And it was a technique that if I saw one try to get it and not get it, I knew one was there. And it was a question of I had to make a second cast and coax that fish in to taking the bait on the second cast. And watching a guy throw a topwater bait is that's really good at it. And there's a lot of guys that are good at it. But watching a guy do that is like watching an artist paint a picture. And because you're not going to throw it out there and just reel it back the same way you did the time before. Mm-hmm. And it just always intrigued me how fish would attack that bait just out of pure meanness, try to get it like a shark attack. And I love to flip. Don't get me wrong. I mean, these guys today, from the Denny Breyers to the Ricky Klunds, even some of the younger anglers today, they're not only good at one thing, they can do multiple things. And they're real good at all 4 or 5 techniques to be able to be successful at doing it.
Right. Well, I know with topwater, of course, it's pretty seasonal. I mean, we're probably just now getting into topwater. So other than topwater, what was your next fallback technique for you? What's it been for you?
Well, I love to flip. And I was taught by the best. That's the one thing I can say growing up was I've had the opportunity that a lot of kids today have never had and won't ever get. And that was when I was growing up, I got to fish with the guys that invented flipping. I got to fish with Jimmy Houston that knows how to throw a spinnerbait. Mm-hmm. I've been in the boat with all of these guys. And so as far as me getting taught, which there's very few of us left, but as far as me getting taught how to fish a particular bait, I got taught by the very best. And as time has grown and gone longer and longer, you take what Jimmy Houston taught you and you add to that. You take what Kevin Van Dam taught you and you add to that. And that makes an angler way far more dangerous than what he was.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when you're dealing with the best in the world at what they do.
Oh yeah, and that, when you fish a tournament, it's how do you approach the lake? What technique are you going to use this week? And you're not going to put all 4 techniques together for one tournament. Mm-hmm. You're going to pick a precise technique, and that's how you're going to approach that lake on this given day. And then sometimes the fish change, and when they change, that's when you got to be smart enough to make that change from a topwater bait to a flipping stick, or from a flipping stick to a crankbait. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes a guy extremely dangerous at tournament fishing, is one that can make those changes quick.
Well, Mr. Zell, we got, perfect time of year talking topwater here with the shad spawn coming up on most of our lakes down here in the south. Give me one topwater shad spawn bait that you would recommend.
Man,
and color.
That it's hard to beat a chugger style bait, like a popar or even. I invented a bait for Predco a couple years ago called a prank, which a lot of fishermen have never gotten yet. And that suits me just fine. But it's real hard to beat a chugging type bait for a shad spawn, or a spinnerbait for that, imagine, for a shad spawn, because color, I get people all the time, they go, well, what's the best color? The best color is the color that fish is going to want to eat. And that's going to change dramatically depending on, am I fishing in Louisiana or Texas? Did we get a lot of rain, or have we not had a lot of rain? So color combinations, the best advice I can give 98% of the anglers that are out there is, don't get locked into one particular color. Keep your color selection down to a very minimum, and you'll catch a lot more fish by doing that. Instead of having 20 popars, you have 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And those colors will be shad related or minnow related, and those colors are going to be chrome and black, chrome and green, white, bone. You don't need just an over an abundance of colors.
Is color overrated in topwater, say, versus if you're flipping and worms or throwing wire, or you're worm fishing? Is topwater colors not near as important as it is the cadence or how you fish it?
Well, the cadence is always important, and it's like I said earlier, watching me throw a popar is like watching a guy paint a picture, because I've got multiple different cadences that I will work a bait to try to get a bite. Once I get a bite, then I expand on that particular cadence to see how many more bites I'm working that bait that way. Mm-hmm. It's not like a spinner bait or a crankbait where you tie it on and you throw it and you reel it back.
Right.
Topwater baits you've got to give action to, and they don't have their own built-in actions. Now the prank has a built-in action where you can chug it real slow, or you can crank it like a small weight bait. It has multiple efficiencies in that bait for an angler to fish with it. And but until an angler gets one, he won't know. And it's like the Rebel Popar some 25 years ago. Most anglers they never got one. And the reason they didn't get one was because when they opened up their tackle box, they go, "Oh, I got something like that. I got me a Lucky 13." And that was a head and chugger. Well, that bait isn't like a Pop-R. They're different. They look alike, but they're different.
Mm-hmm.
They sound different. They float different. And so when it comes to top order baits and stuff like that, you got to have all those. You got to have them all. I mean, it's like a jerk bait. You can't go throw a jerk bait and just have 3. You got to have 6.
Right. Right.
Because all 6 of them are different.
I like it. Good info.
Yeah, great info.
Now, Mr. Zell, so let's come into the day and time we're in right now with fishing. What are your thoughts on where we are right now as a fishing industry? And I'm not talking virus related. I'm just talking about with multiple tournament circuits, from where we have came from, kind of to where we are now with the multiple circuits, and kind of what you're seeing.
Well, I mean, the virus has played a part on what's happening.
Right.
And it's, I went to Sam Rayburn 3 days ago, and I can tell you right now, you'd have thought it was the 4th of July.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I don't know of a safer place to be right now other in the middle of the lake with a rod in your hand.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
The sport itself has really evolved. Back in the days when I got started, you couldn't get the industry behind high school fishing that much. I probably had the first bass club in a junior high school there ever was. And there wasn't but 4 or 5 of us in the club, and we'd go to the lake and have us a little tournament just to see who could beat who. In today's world, it has really evolved into a good thing because a lot of the parents have gotten behind it. There's college money that's available for high school kids for college funds, and it's getting those kids out of a bad element. If they're around, I've never met a kid that fishes in my lifetime that fishes and hunts that's ever gotten in trouble. And these kids some of them are more serious about it than me.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And it's really been a great thing to see. Now, with the kids not having school this year, it's gonna change some things, and it's gonna take a while for it all to come back as strong as what it was, and which I think we'll see it, but I think it's gonna be after the first of next year before we see it evolve back to like it was.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, but everybody's scared. And I went to the Bassmasters Classic when they first started having that outbreak, and my wife's looking at me with a can of Lysol and some hand wipes.
Don't feel bad. Mine did the same thing. When I got home, I got Lysol.
Yeah.
But
He got hosed.
It's, everything here's been fine, and it's been a terrible thing that's happened, and it's happened all around the world, just not in the United States, or just not in one state.
Right.
Everybody's going to pay the price for this to some extent.
Absolutely.
Well, here's a question I've got for you. Has the fishing industry overstaffed itself with anglers? And I'm going to give you an example. There's 88 Elite Series pros, there's 80 MLF pros, and 154 FLW. That's a total of 322 pro fishermen, Zell, that are trying to make a living these companies, there's not enough pocket change to go around for everybody. What?
No.
Do we have too many now? Are there? And I used to think that wasn't possible. I do think it's possible now. We have too many people trying to make a living.
Well, I don't think it's when you look. Let's take for example 80 elite guys. Out of that 80, how many actually make totally their living from bass fishing? Probably not more than 10%.
Yeah, right.
It would be the same thing with major league. Well, major league fishing. A lot of those guys. Some of those guys are semi-retired. Some of them have other businesses. But the sport of fishing as a whole in the industry has been somewhat fairly small. It's not as big as the sport is huge.
Mm-hmm.
The industry is small.
Correct.
And let me just give you a quick example. Let's think of a fishing lure company. Okay, how many fishing lure companies are there? There's a lot. How many are big? Out of a lot, there ain't but maybe 3 or 4 big companies. And that's all there is.
All right.
So how many fishermen big companies sponsor? I would think not that many.
Right.
And
4 or 5 at the most, isn't it?
yeah. So
yeah.
The sport has really gotten sort of small, and it's always been small. But what's going to happen now, because of what all has transpired with the virus thing, all of these companies forecast product that they sell. So, in other words, let's take Gary Yamamoto, for example. He says, okay, we're going to sell 10,000 packages of green pumpkin Cincos. That's what he makes. He may make 12,000 packs, but he's going to sell 10. Well, his problem right now is he's out of product and can't get any product.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these stores, for example, Walmart, they forecast what they're going to sell in Rebel Pop R's. Well, because of the virus and everything that's been closed, if you go into a Walmart store today, if you walk back in the fishing tackle department, there's nobody back there. Everybody is in the food department snatching toilet paper towels.
yeah, you're right.
A lot of the Walmart orders, from my understanding, with every bait manufacturer, has been cut in half overnight. And so a lot of these bait companies, they're scaling back. They're letting a lot of the pros go, no matter how long they've been there, and they're restructuring their entire company to get it right. And it'll be after the first of next year, I would imagine, before this industry even starts to see light on that stuff.
Yeah.
Because by the time all this is over with, we're going to be straight into hunting season. And as we all know, the fishing industry makes their money January through May, so it's just a horrible. If this would have happened August, September, October, this is a whole another story for the fishing industry. But happening when it happened, it's definitely going to take its toll.
Oh, yeah. It's, it's even like myself. I'm looking at doing other things outside of fishing, just to try to keep my head above water. And, I mean, I was asked the other day, if I was going to even try to finish the year on the pro circuit. I don't know if I can do that. And, I mean, it's that devastating to the anglers. And, because we have big entry fee money, but it's going to be interesting to see, the ICAST show where all the companies show their new products for the year 20. That's all out.
Yeah, they've announced that this week.
So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, another thing too is if and I mean, you were talking about it earlier just on the phone. A friend of mine in Abilene, Texas, looking for a used Ranger boat, and I put him in contact with a dealer over here in Louisiana, and I told him, I said, you know what? If you'll just be patient, you're gonna have the pick of the litter in about a month of all the bass boats you want to shake a stick at, because a lot of these guys are going to have to give up these boats because they ain't been working. They're not going to be fishing tournaments. First thing's going to go, that boat's going back to the bank. So,
yeah, I mean, it's going to be going to be a while before they can straighten all that out. And I mean, it's really not a real good situation right now for everybody.
Right. Well, if you, we're going to ask you the same question we ask every guy we have on the show, Zell. If you could go back in time and take something with you from back in your early days when it all started, electronics, boat accessories, baits, tackles, lures, whatever, what would be the one thing that you would like to had back when you first started that you really think would have made a big difference in your career?
A college education.
Oh, we've never heard that one.
That's
now.
a first.
That's a first.
In today's world, none of us would have. You're talking to a person that I have made my sole living from right out of high school in fishing, and I don't know a whole lot. I mean, there's certain things when I was in high school that I liked to do. I loved wood shop, and I went to work framing houses when I was a teenager part-time, and but fishing eventually took that over. Mm-hmm. But you really need, I mean, just for times like this, you never know what's going to happen.
Right. Right.
But I'm at the age where I don't think I could walk on that 2x4 at 80 feet above the ground real good anymore.
Right, exactly. That's a little risky.
But I'm, I'm looking at doing some other things. Hopefully, whatever it is I find, I can stay in the fishing world, because that's been my life. So, I'm like I said earlier, I'm 62. I'll be 63 this year, and I feel like I can do it another 6-7 years, maybe, and be competitive. And I would like to try to do that if at all possible. Yeah. And I do know a lot about fishing lures, so I would like to work with some companies on developing new product if possible, because a lot of the baits that I have in the back of my head, the world's never seen before. So it's just a matter of working with an engineer and a guy that can run a 3D printer and come up with the new baits that really catch fish. I'm a big believer in, if I'm going to put a bait out there, I want it to be one I know you can buy and tie it on and go to a lake and catch a fish on it. And I don't want it to be one that looks pretty and you buy it and not catch a fish on it.
Right.
So it's hopefully things will get better. I'm sure they will. It's just going to take some time.
Well, Zell, we can't say thank you enough for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and best of luck and best wishes to you and the rest of your career. I know you've got some things you've got to try to figure out, and I know you will. I know this industry's been good to you over the years, and you've been great for the industry itself. So hopefully when the dust settles, Zell Rowland will be right there where he's supposed to be, and we look forward to having you back on again another day.
Well, man, thank you so much, and you guys be safe, and I'll probably see one of you on Rayburn or Toledo in the next week or two.
Yep, I'm planning on making my way over there. I hope to see you.
But I will tell you they're biting at Sam Rayburn right now.
Well, good deal. That's a good report. We've been looking for a report, so.
Well, y'all be safe, and look forward to talking to you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zell.
All right, bye-bye.
Zell Rowland, one of the original members of the Conrail gang with Gary Klein and Rick Clun, and it was good hearing from him and getting to talk fishing, with a guy like Zell.
I just hate the negative, coming from him as far as he don't know if he's going to be able to finish the year out.
Right.
And if somebody for like Zell Rowland, like you said, all he's ever known is fishing, and me my whole life, Zell Rowland's always been there. He has always fished, and to hear that he don't know for sure if he's going to be able to continue that, it breaks my heart for him. And Steve, I think there's going to be several more we're going to be hearing from that's just don't know if they're going to be able to finish or not.
And I thought it was interesting. I talked to a guy the other day, and he's one of the Elite Series pros, and I've actually talked to an MLF pro that had the same comment. The fishing industry right now is going through a transition period where there's a lot of young blood coming into the sport, and some of them are being successful. And there's kind of a push to get some of the older generation guys out. And I hate to see that.
Yeah.
I guess it's no different than NBA, Major League Baseball, professional football. There comes a point in time where you as an athlete or you as an angler have served your time, and you're no longer as beneficial to a company as you used to be. Your value has declined.
Yes.
And it's a sport. Maybe fishing just like any other sport, Kevin.
It is. It really is. Now, fishing, of course, you're able to have a longer career than your other professional sports, but you're absolutely 100% right. There comes a time when the industry is just going to try to get that new blood in, especially now with social media and the younger generation being able to do what they do social media-wise and so on and so forth. It gives companies that if I can go get a 20-year-old that knows how to do all social media, has a YouTube following, and has all this, you go with that guy compared to the older who just fishes and promotes well, but the more you got to get the most bang for your buck, no doubt about it.
Exactly. And real quick, again, we want to thank the boat shop. Thank Raymond Kidd for sponsoring our show. We appreciate you, Raymond. And so now let's move on to, we got some tournament update news. Some companies have released some new dates. ABA has released some new dates. BFL has released some new dates. As far as the what's it called? The series, FLW series, they've already announced their dates for their newly scheduled events. And so now we're getting some of the lower tiers like the BFL. The BFL for Lake of the Pines, which is the cowboy division of the BFL, it's been rescheduled for June the 13th. If you're looking to get in that, make sure you call into FLW, reserve your spot. And also, here's another thing, Kevin, that I just now thought about it. Co-anglers. There could be some issues now with co-anglers and the pairings and your guaranteed co-angler. You're supposed to have a guaranteed co-angler when you sign up with FLW. How many guys are going to be affected and not fish anymore? This could really throw a lot of things in a tailspin.
And especially down here in our location where the gas and oil industry is so prevalent on what people do for a living. So many of those guys have got laid off.
Yeah. Yeah.
That June 13th, I'm nervous to see the turnout we will have for that event because it might not be good.
I'm nervous for the turnout for the rest of the year. I really think this is going to affect a lot of people for the rest of this year. You're talking 2 months and people have been out of work.
Yeah.
ABA, which is the American Bass Anglers Association, they have their open series which is a pro-am type circuit. Kevin and I both have fished that. I fish it now. June 20th is their next event, scheduled event, and then they're having a makeup for the May 2nd tournament the next day on June the 21st. So those will be back-to-back days on Sam Rayburn. They'll both be out of the same ramp. They're going out of Humphrey Pavilion both times. And then there's one scheduled event that has not been rescheduled yet that they will schedule a later date. They'll announce that, and we'll pass that on to you when we know that. Also, the ABA Ray Scott National Championship, which was supposed to take place this month in April, the first week in April, has now, at Lake Hartwell, has been pushed all the way to the first weekend in November 1st to the 7th. I know it's changed my plans. I'm now planning on going to that. I qualified for it, so I'm looking to make that trip now. And that's another thing. There's going to be some guys that may not have gone before. They're going to go now because of the scheduling and the rescheduling and so forth. So
everything, and we're having to shorten. Everybody is having to shorten their season down so small. There's going to be a lot of stuff on top of one another. A lot of guys are just going to have to pick. Well, I'm doing this circuit, and that's what they do,
right?
Because there's just not enough time to get them all in anymore.
Kevin, ICAST shutting down, which didn't shock any of us because I know they've been promoting it and pushing it. And I actually sent in a personal comment back to the ICAST staff that, what are y'all thinking? There's no way I'm going to go to ICAST. People from all over the world come to ICAST.
Yeah, ICAST is the most international show that I know of. I mean, from all over.
Right. How is that from a dealer standpoint and a vendor like you are? How, and a company standpoint, how does that affect V&M or other companies like yourself?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, Steve. ICAST has changed a lot over the years.
Right.
If this was 5 years ago, it has a huge impact on the industry.
Right.
But the way that ICAST has gone, it's not going to be near as bad. It's not going to have near the effect that it would have had 5 years ago. Yeah. 5 years ago, people walked around and placed orders. You had your meetings with your big box accounts.
Right.
It's not. We have meetings. It's basically kind of a meet and greet session now.
And now it's more of a bait showcase.
It's more of a showcase thing. Yeah. It's not as much about business as it used to be.
Exactly.
Because before ICAST, I have to go to Springfield, Missouri to Bass Pro Shops to meet with them. Right. I have to go to Katy, Texas to meet with Academy. I have to go, now that we're part of Walmart, I've got to go to Walmart. Instead of five years ago, everybody met at ICAST. Yeah. It's not like that anymore.
Right.
So it will have an effect on the industry. ICAST is good for the industry, but it's not going to have as big as an effect as it would have 5 years ago.
Right. And a lot of companies reveal their new baits, new tackle, new rods, new reels.
And it's still going to be that. It's all going to be done on social media now. So like Bassmaster.
That's the number one source anyway.
Correct. Yeah. Just like Bassmaster has it, they reveal their top baits from Classic, and all the social media platforms still do. Everybody's still going to get that. It's just not going to come from ICAST.
Exactly.
So all the info will still need to get out there.
Well, Kevin, Toledo Bend, you seem to be doing a lot better at Toledo Bend than I've been doing. Tell us what we need to be doing at Toledo Bend right now.
Well, I'm hoping the shad spawn kicks off this week. With these warm temperatures we got coming up, it was kind of starting a couple weeks ago.
Right.
This cold water kind of knocked it back. I think cold weather anyway. I think it should get started up this week for sure.
Yeah.
There's fish in all stages. You still have some fish up shallow that are doing their deal, and some fish are starting to pull out in that 12 to 15 foot range, just off the points on the inner spawning bays.
Yeah. Now, are you referring to mainly the south end of the lake? Because the upper end of the lake's probably done, isn't it?
But they're still catching them out of the bushes on the north end of the lake.
Are they?
They're still catching them shallow. The north end fish is shallow, even though those fish are done spawning. They stay shallow until it's June, July, and August. Them fish move out to the river channel, as we know. But still catching fish shallow on the south end as well, like I said. But you can start in that 10 to 15 foot range. Carolina rig is really putting some fish in the boat, some good fish in the boat.
And as Sam Rayburn, as Zell alluded to, they are biting over there. I've seen 2 or 3 promotions and videos with Ken Smith, KenSmithFishing.com. Ken's been doing some promotional stuff. The hay grass is alive and well at Sam Rayburn right now. And he seemed to be doing better where there was strictly hay grass and no hydrilla. Where the hydrilla and hay grass were together, he didn't do as well. When he could get strictly hay grass, he said that's where the better fish have been, which would be mid-lake on down. So if you're going to Sam Rayburn, even behind the hay grass, a lot of times there are stretches of about 4 to 5 feet of just open between hay grass patches. Don't be afraid to throw behind the front edge of the hay grass and get behind the hay grass, because a lot of fish are being caught from behind the hay grass.
The biggest thing for that hay grass on Toledo and Rayburn is that's where the bluegill get.
Right.
That's where the bluegill hide.
Yeah.
And
they're getting ready to come in and do their thing.
And they're getting ready to come in and do their thing. So that's why it's such a big player this time of year. If you can find some that's holding some brim, like when you're fishing along and you see the brim along the hay grass, I promise you're going to get bit through that stretch.
Right. Kevin, anything else you want to add?
Well, of course, FLW has postponed everything through May 23rd, which we talked about a while ago.
Right.
Really, nobody has released their pro. All 3 pro circuits has got to be starting to reschedule.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the next week or two for us to have some announcements to make on those.
Right.
Those should start coming back out to see when everybody's going to get their stuff in. Really anxious to see what FLW is going to go, because their championship is in August.
Right.
So they've got to get it in quick.
Yeah.
And my understanding is they're going to get them all in before August. So interesting to see how everything should start coming out here the next week or two. So we'll kind of see how it all plays out.
And I guess the unknown in all of this is each state is at a different phase when it comes to COVID-19. Mm-hmm. Some states are farther along than others. I know Texas is trying to open up all their state parks now. They're requiring you to wear a face mask if you're in any Texas state park. No matter what part of the park you're in, you're required to wear a mask. I know in East Texas, in my old hometown of Mount Pleasant, Texas, they're requiring you to wear a mask when you go into Walmart, Brookshire's. It's required. Kids, adults, try to limit the number of people you bring into Walmart or to the grocery store, but they want a mask on everybody. But for Texas to open up their state parks again, I think this next week, and which is a good positive sign. Texas is trying to get their economy going again, as well as other states will be doing the same thing. I just hope, Kevin, it's not too soon and we don't get careless and end up with a bigger problem than what we started out with.
No, I agree, but we definitely got to get this economy back going one way or the other. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting next couple of weeks here how all this plays out. But I'm glad to see some positive, seeing some dates to be released, kind of get things going back to normal.
And real quick, once again, we want to thank Raymond Kidd. And if you're looking for a place to maybe pick up an aluminum boat, their Sea Arc brand is one they carry there. Great aluminum line of boats. Stop by 2410 Sanford Avenue in Shreveport. Let the boat shop take care of all your boating needs, or give them a call at 318-402-0399 or go to shreveportboatshop.com to learn more. And that's going to wrap us up. Again, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us, and also make sure you hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. And we look forward to continuing to make you a better angler right here on Tackle Talk Live.
Stay tuned for our tips of the week.
Yes, tip of the week coming up right now.
Hey guys, Kevin here with Tackle Talk Live weekly tips of the week. I want to talk to you guys a little bit this week about the Fish Life First Aid. This is something I got from some of our guys over there at Fish Life that I began using beginning of the year, and I've really become a huge fan of. And this is something that really works, especially when you hook those fish in the tongue or down deep in the gill and they start to bleed. That is one thing that you don't need in your live well, and especially if you're in a tournament, you're worried if that fish is going to make it to the end of the day. So what you do is you take the First Aid, you take the fish out of the live well, hold the fish out of the water, and you pour the treatment on wherever it is bleeding at, where if it's in the tongue or in the gill, you pour the treatment and you hold the fish out of water for about 30 seconds. You can place the fish back in the water. Most of the time that patches up and stops the bleeding, which we don't want the fish bleeding in our live well. And if we can stop the bleeding, the fish should be fine and make it throughout the rest of the day. And he can swim off at the end of the day at the tournament. But if you look back in there, he starts bleeding again, you simply pull the fish back out, pour a little bit more on it, make sure it stops bleeding, hold the fish out for about 30 seconds. You can simply put your fish back in a live well, and the bleeding should stop. I've never had to do it more than twice, and I've used this stuff a pretty good bit this year so far already. And I've never had to do it more than twice. A lot of times the first round gets it done on the fish, especially if it's just in the tongue or something. Now, something deep in the throat, there's nothing you can do about that, guys. But you definitely want to try and give this stuff a try. There's not much stuff like this on the market. The Fish Life First Aid is something every tournament angler definitely needs in their boat. That way we can keep more fish alive and get more fish back to weigh in alive, so we don't get those penalties and deductions. But make sure give it a look, give it a try. I think it's something you guys definitely need to try out.